are some things that rich ultra-rich people do which the average person doesn't even consider? Story 1. There are several single-family-owned Montessori schools. Like a family office put together an entire mini-school just for their kids and their friends' kids. It became a thing to do when the pandemic hit. Some of them are 100 mobile too, like teaching on the jet all over the world. Story 2. I have several rich friends who are my age 50s and don't work. Their biggest perk is attending every concert and show and buying front row, not just our area, but if their favorite band is playing across the country, they fly with their kids there and spend the weekend. Story 3. A former client of mine, sadly recently deceased, has had 2 yachts moored in the south of France, next to each other. One was fast, one was slow. He'd take the fast one down to Saint-Tropez, and have the other one follow because it was more comfortable. He'd have lunch in one of his restaurants there, then relax on the slow yacht for the day. Sometimes he'd stay overnight, sometimes not, but he'd take the fast yacht back to home port. The captains would hand out thousands to get the best berths in Saint-Tropez. He literally used the yachts like his taxi. He would do the same to his house in Portofino, but that was usually a week or so trip. His recent passing made global headlines, to give an idea of the dosh, but to be fair, his tax contributions to the local economy literally changed the small port town he lived in. He created public parks, golf and tennis courts, a horse riding club, gym facilities, all well maintained, fully staffed with great summer programs for the kids. Further works improved the roads, sidewalks, public beaches and walking hiking paths. He bought a disused old church and turned it into a public museum, etc. He literally contributed so much to the local economy that they no longer charge for public parking anywhere. It's all free, all year round. That's how you're supposed to trillionaire. Story 4. I live near Scottsdale with a lot of wealthy people. They constantly remodel their vacation homes, so there's always great stuff. I bought a brand new Viking refrigerator from Craigslist. Still wrapped, it's 8 feet tall, 36. The homeowners decided they wanted a double refrigerator instead. They've owned the home 2 years. Still haven't stayed a night there. The refrigerator retails for $18K. I got it for $1,500. Story 5. They call boutique stores ahead of time to say they are coming in on date X. The boutique high-end store pulls every super expensive items complete with accessories on a rolling rack to have ready. I worked in a high-end store back in the day. If it was on sale, they pulled the sale tag off and literally tried to get rid of all the expensive items. Think layering to upsell. Story 6. Paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for golf course memberships. I photograph luxury homes in the most exclusive golf course neighborhoods in my state. I know of one neighborhood where membership runs $400K and there's a wait list of people wanting to join. Story 7. I dated a girl from a super rich family for a couple years, and every spring her entire family would go through their closets and donate 90 of their wardrobe, and then go out and drop $20K on entirely new clothes for the year, because they had to have the new season of everything. As someone who grew up wearing clothes till they fell apart and patching them if they still fit, this blew my mind. Getting rid of perfectly good clothes because they were last season is just insane to me. Story 8. Buying 2 1,500 cashmere sequin short-sleeve sweaters, so that your tailor can cut up one sweater and make sleeves out of it because the top doesn't come in a long-sleeve version. Source: I used to work for a very wealthy retired actress who did this. I had to purchase the sweaters for her and schedule the tailor. Story 9. Years ago I read an article about someone whose business was keeping ultra-rich people's cars ready to go. As in if you have a Ferrari in multiple cities they'd keep it fueled up, oil changed, etc. and drive it around the block once a week or so, and have it waiting at the airport when the owner flies into town. Story 10. During COVID I worked as a private jet charter broker. We had a guy, a British member of the House of Lords no less, that explained that sod the quarantine restrictions. I need to fly to Monaco every other week to ensure I keep my tax residency in Monaco, and not in the UK. I also had someone who ID regularly fly between London and Baku, Azerbaijan, ask if they could take a short stop off in Dubai, which is very much not on the way to get their passport stamped to ensure they maintain their residency there. They also once showed up with well over half a ton of luggage that they described as, oh, just some stuff we picked up shopping. You won't be surprised to hear that they were very confused when we advised them that 27 boxes and suitcases of stuff won't fit on an aircraft that we'd repeatedly told them only had space for about 10 to 12 suitcases. Finally, we had a Russian guy ask us to call his Caribbean destination island airport and ask if they could ensure that his flight was not randomly selected for a COVID test, as he didn't have time to complete the quarantine if he had been positive. He didn't care whether he had the virus, just that getting caught with it might up his travel plans in like July 2020. Story 11. Have assistants do things we wouldn't dream of doing. I know a rich person who hired a personal assistant to find a land to purchase. Here are the criteria: forested land by the sea, cliffs, quiet area but with cell reception, and make it so that it isn't an area with lots of boat traffic so I can take my bath while looking out at sea. Story 12. My mum's boss buys a brand new top-of-the-range car almost every year and gives the year-old one to one of his kids or family members. I jokingly asked for one. Truth is, I doubt I could even afford the insurance, let alone maintenance and fuel. Story 13. Request off-menu or off-topic things. For example, calling down to the concierge at a hotel and say you want a romantic couple set up down by the pool, or handing your credit card to the usher at a theater and ask them to go by and deliver you a cocktail. Yes, I have seen both these things. Story 14. Their vacation homes are stocked with regionally appropriate attire, mountain clothes, beach clothes, etc. They also keep luxury vehicles at these homes that most people could only dream of owning and using as a daily driver. Story 15. My friend paid the fee to be able to have a personal for his family at Disney World that walks your group to the front of all the lines. I think that it was like $7,500 a day. Story 16. I've been a chef for 20 years. I've dealt with this a bit, buying out a restaurant for several days. In case they wanted to just drop in during their vacation with no wait times at all, we charged $50,000 per meal service they wanted to buy out, made us $300K over 3 days. They never showed up, but went to our sister restaurant across the river. In Miami, bottle service is insane. We know this already, but you have no idea. Aside from paying $2,000 for a bottle of Grey Goose with mixers, they will spend several thousand on Ace of Spades or Crystal and just throw $200,000 on the black card for one night of drinking. This extends to champagne, not just for drinking, but for the act of spraying on each other, but on the scantily clad girls pretending to like you for $25 guaranteed tip. This includes a special champagne menu with an assortment of spray packages. You can buy one bottle of Dom P to drink band spray around for $1,000, or you can order whole entire cases of Crystal, just 2 spray on each other for $50,000 a case. I've seen poolside bungalows order several cases for pool parties. Story 17. Consistency in investing. The richest person I know consistently invests in index funds and rarely targets individual stocks. Additionally, they do it all themselves and don't pay people to manage it for them. Story 18. Wake up and can do whatever they want. There is no urgency or having to work to provide. They literally have unlimited time and can buy all and every service to free their time up. I want to go to the museum today, park, or let's go to Costa Rica. Story 19. Have a person on staff for the express purpose of communicating to the rest of their staff, because you clearly can't expect them to be talking to all these people directly. Story 20. Here is the thing about that kind of wealth. It doesn't buy you things. Things just exist. The real thing money buys you is freedom and time. Things are a necessity in terms of food, healthcare, etc., but anything is just stuff. Story 21. Buying a multimillion-dollar home nearby where they're building a bigger multimillion-dollar home so they can be nearby during construction. Dozens of spare current tech devices in case they lose one. Don't want to pack one or it dies. Buying a quarry so they can guarantee all of the stone in their home is the same. Story 22. TLDR. Man imported an ancient monastery door to use on his ranch home. I worked on a ranch just south of Crested Butte. If you aren't a billionaire, don't even think about looking at buying a home there. The owner of the ranch bought the front door from a Tibetan monastery and flew it to the US to use as his front door on his main house. It was all ornamentally hand-carved, like 3,000 years old, approximate 12 by 6 by 2, and weighed tons upon tons upon tons. Not even the cost of the door itself, but the shipping alone must have been astronomical, and this was just his front door on his main house. There must have been over 10 buildings on the property. I've seen worked on many billionaire mansions all over CO, and this dude's ranch is the nicest I've ever seen. Story 23. The one thing I have seen consistently with my very wealthy friends is the attitude of how can they make the money they make work for them to make more. As average person is thinks what can I buy what would they make, instead of how can I make more. Story 24. Not ultra rich, but I shared an apartment with some people in college. One of the roommates we had never came out of his room and his parents paid for an Indian granny to come every week and cook him a week's worth of fresh food, and let me tell you, every time she came over all the rest of us were drooling and also kinda pissed because she took over the small kitchen for a few hours. He still ordered food delivery every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, and always had the best electronics. He never came out of his room, never talked to us, and didn't seem to go to class frequently. I definitely thought that kid's family must be rich and trying to teach him how to slum it in a shared space. Story 25. Concierge. Private specialized medical care. If they have a special or chronic condition, say kidney failure, they'll have a dialysis ward installed in their home with a private nephrologist, etc., or end up hiring someone who will end up donating an organ to them, or cancer treatments, set up in home, etc., or have an MRI installed in their home, etc. Story 26. When they wanted an addition to their Hamptons house, they couldn't get a start date from the super busy local contractors. So they rented a nearby house and hired a company from Maine to move in there and do the addition, paid for like a dozen workers to live in a house in the Hamptons until the addition was done, like over a year. Story 27. Steve Jobs decided he didn't like having a license plate, because he could be identified by it and it kept getting stolen, so he called up the Mercedes dealer and made a deal with them. In CA it was legal to drive a car with no license plate for 30 days after you get it. So once a month, they'd show up and replace his car with an identical new Mercedes. So he'd never have a car for more than 30 days and could effectively drive around forever with no license plate. Story 28. They can make multiple high-risk investments. If 1 in 30 makes it, then they are well in the black. I had a friend who started a successful business. He made some risky investments, one of which is currently paying out at $100K every year and is likely to double in the next 5 to 10 years. There were 20 or so that he lost almost all his investment, but in 3 years he has made all that money back. Now it is just profit. Story 29. Asked my boss what he's doing for Christmas break. Family coming over for presents. In-laws coming over for presents. Movie night. Friend is driving our small yacht WR private chef to our island in the Bahamas for the week, and we're flying private to meet them. I bet they deny my raise when I ask too. Story 30. Why do they always assume that getting together means spending money? The majority of my friends are rich, like 2 houses. vacation in another country rich, I barely leave my city, when we plan to hang out they always suggest getting lunch or dinner. Last time I asked if we could do something they didn't involve much money, like going to a park or stay in, the answer, you can always come after dinner if you don't want to have dinner with us. It's frustrating. Story 31, I think a theme I'm seeing is spending exorbitant amounts of money to avoid small inconveniences. My boss would get his assistant to book flights. Then call every restaurant for reservations. Then ask all his friends which restaurant is best. Then cancel all reservations but the one he chose. Then cancel the flights and book them closer to his reservation. Then book multiple hotels. Then ask his friends which hotel was best. Then cancel all hotels except the one he chose. Then cancel and rebook flights to be closer to his reservations. And he would book an extra day at the hotel so when he arrived he could go immediately to his room instead of waiting for check-in time. He would spend thousands of extra dollars every time he went on a trip to avoid the minor inconvenience of having to be organized and be wait for anything during his trip. Oh, and see, he would pay his assistant 100 grand a year and not trust her to do something like book me a trip to Berlin at the best hotel and best restaurant. Make sure I don't have to wait around for anything. Story 32, empty garages. Like, nothing in the garage but a car or two or more and a case or two of water. They don't have to fix anything, or do any yard work, or anything else. Story 33, buy 80 seats on commercial flight for their Falcons. Story 34, my friend was head of housekeeping for a rich family. Before traveling she would have to bring any clothing in suitcases to the dry cleaners where everything was freshly pressed, folded and tissue paper placed in between each item, even the underwear. Story 35, reading these comments is crazy. I feel privileged because my grandparents helped me out with paying my rent for a couple months while unemployed and job searching, but for my partner, they became homeless at age 18 after fleeing domestic violence, has no family to turn to for money, and for them not working could never be an option unless they wanted to go back to living in a halfway house. I sometimes get jealous of my one roommate because they have a parent who works at Kaiser and so they get to have good health insurance, and they also can afford to eat takeout often, while I can't. In the end, we are all three of us sharing the same tiny apartment, arguing about who has it worse or better while there are people out here who own private islands and casually fly to Paris for lunch like it's nothing. Story 36, my SIL's cousin's family is very rich. They have 2 basketball courts inside their house, that's how massive it is. Inside the house, they bought all the lots next to their mansion and built a park just for their family so they wouldn't need to be near anyone. I got vertigo when I walked into the gym, it was so large. My brain couldn't handle that I was inside such a large space that was also inside a house and it couldn't understand what it was looking at, and then it processed it. That experience is burned in my memory. I was looking for a bathroom when I stumbled on it. Story 37, charter a private jet to take the family on vacation. More of a rich than ultra-rich, who can have personal jets. Once you've ponied up first class for parents, kids, and nannies, you're close enough to the cost of a smaller charter. You pick your own travel times, skip the airport security mess, don't have to wait in airport lounges, and can usually have your limousine drive up to the jet to pick up your luggage. Story 38, back in the early aughts I used to work with family offices, some of which dealt with the UHNW market. Some of the simple things they bought which blew my mind were name cards from companies like Black Astrum, which could run from hundreds to thousands of dollars per card, by sections of the bookstore. Like literally, the guy pointed out one whole section and just said he wanted one of every book they're shipped over. Later I found out you can actually pay a bookstore to just ship over a whole library. Just tell them you want to look like an expert on anthropology or something, and they'll outfit a floor-to-ceiling library of anthropology books for you, buy jewelry by the tray. They would close the store when these people walked in, and the wife would point at a tray in the display case, and they'd buy it all. We once received a gift of apples from a UHNW client. They were fancy Japanese apples, which cost around US $2.20 per apple. I got a box of 4, along with 10 other people in the office. They were amazing. They ask for things for free and get it. You'd think that's cheap of them, but they really do. I know one woman who asked for a specific serial number for a limited edition watch, and she actually asked if she could just have it. She got it for free. Also they ask for free stuff like sweets, a new phone when he lost it at a hotel, free pedicure services, etc. And they get it, probably because they spend so much and lend some celebrity status. I know a guy who, once in a while, goes through his employee list and pays off the school tuition or medical debts of a bunch of people. There is no regularity or reason to it, he just does it when he feels like it. Some of them have copies of magazines like Nominus on their coffee tables. I didn't realize how much of a flex that was, until I realized Nominus costs from $2,500 to $5,000 per issue. Later though, I found out some rich people get copies for free as a branding move. All those branded stores like Prada, Gucci, etc., many don't actually seem to care much. Some do, but not the ones I met. Most of them have a tailors they know by name, who makes bespoke pieces for them. I know some who didn't shop for clothes in a store for 3 or 4 years at a stretch. Good times. Story 39, ultra rich don't buy things. They just desire, and it's there, meaning they have a team of people who wait around for them to mention something in passing, and purchase it for them on the off chance they want to use it. Story 40, eat out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My daughter has made friends with a particularly wealthy family, and the mother and the father are pretty much useless human beings. The dad works and does nothing else. The mom goes to the gym and does nothing else. Nobody in the family cooks, so they eat out for every meal. Story 41. I used to do pest control for the wealthy. Been in a lot of mansions. The one that threw me off the most was customer that asked, "Oh, did you get the panic room behind the bookcase? The what behind the where?" Those people also had an outdoor, life-size chess set on a travertine checkerboard, and like 3 pools with a rock bridge formation over the courtyard inside their house. Story 42. Be really boring. I think everybody thinks rich people have fabulous lives, doing all this crazy stuff, but some of them just like to stay home and watch movies and play Xbox. Story 43. Girl in college was from an African country, sweetest, nicest person. She asked to sit with me at breakfast one morning. Fascinating conversation, totally down to earth. Spoke to her roommate later, who described her life basically as Prince Akeem's from Coming to America. She had pet giraffe and elephants, etc. I thought she was joking. She said she refers to home as my father's country. She then said, "Let me tell you about last week." She decided she didn't want to bum rides and wanted a car. The roommate described listening to her call her father and ask for a car, and her father telling go to the Mercedes dealership in 2 days Saturday, he'll arrange it. That weekend she drove her to the Mercedes dealership where the owner met this 19 years old. He told her father has arranged for one of every model they had, in every color they had. Whichever she didn't choose they were shipping to him. The car haulers were waiting in the lot to load them. She chose the silver S600. They shipped 33 cars to her dad. Her ballpark math was somewhere around 1.5 to 2 million just for the purchase. This was the middle of America, so getting 33 cars on international shipping vessel probably was a few bucks. Also, she wouldn't have to worry or make any real decisions other than to choose and drive away. Story 44. I once met a man that bought a 5M house about an hour away from his actual house simply because his wife didn't like him smoking cigars at home. He would only use the house to smoke in and have a party or two a year. Story 45. It is well known, but most customer service lines have a special line for rich people celebrities. Just about every customer service line I have ever worked has a whole VIP department. I guarantee you they don't get the slightest pushback. The company will kill itself to make them happy. Also, they get better service. When I worked at DirecTV, one of the VIPs called me. They had 27 TVs. I'm talking outside TVs. TVs in every shitter, shower TVs, with literally every channel, PPV included. DirecTV was pretty much paying them to have the service. Story 46. A guy I knew worked for a company that booked reservations for the rich and famous. Their agents, managers, etc. would contact the company with a vague list of what the person wanted to do and when, where, and it was up to him to make that happen. Sounded like a nightmare of a job, but it paid well from what I remember him telling me. Story 47. Once a really rich girl went slumming with my brother when he lived in NYC. He offered to get her a taxi at one point, and she said no, it'll just take my dad's helicopter, her dad's helicopter. Story 48. See something you want and be able to instantly buy it without even knowing or caring about the price. My see something cool online and has to ponder whether it's worth the amount of hours I had to work to afford it. Story 49. Hosted a dinner at the home of a noble family in Scotland a few years ago, and the Duke was showing me around a few weeks beforehand. Told me a story about how depressed he was when an art appraiser, looking at one of his paintings, told him the painting was not by a student of Goya, but was in fact by Goya himself. He was unhappy because the 15 million jump in value meant he would have to redo his insurance paperwork. He already had to use 2 different insurance companies to cover the total value previously. Other things I found: their original Da Vinci sketches hanging over a toilet under the staircase in a servant's hallway, a Gutenberg Bible in a stack of books on the floor in a spare room, and on it went. Story 50. I do a lot of work for a ridiculously wealthy couple. One thing I saw that springs to mind is having a helicopter drop them off at the end of their driveway and having their car and driver waiting take them from the end of the gravel driveway to the house. It's probably a 35-second walk. It took them longer to get into the car than it would for an ordinary person to walk it. Story 51. Choose not to pay their taxes and instead invest that money so that by the time the IRS forces them to pay the back taxes and negotiated fines, they have still somehow net profited off the investment. Story 52. Collect vintage Fender, Gibson, and Martin guitars. The desired instruments go for over $100K. Some of these folks have millions of dollars invested. Story 53. During the pandemic, I had a theater room added to my home. Mainly, it was because I thought the theater industry would be crippled. In some ways, it was, but not how I thought it would be. Still though, haven't had a need to go to a movie theater in years. I'm actually really glad I did it. Story 54. Just being able to actually do what you want instead of what you have to do every day. I never even think of what I'm going to do in a given day because it's pretty much laid out for me: work, home, bed, then come the weekend I do what I can afford, which is not much. Being rich gives you the power of choice. Story 55. Having a private doctor, one that comes to your house when called. There are actually physician groups that cater to this type of wealth. Would love to be part of one, but I understand the buy-in is very high. Story 56. Have enough money to pay for every little inconvenience and then some with style. Have a cold? How about a 5-star vacation to the beaches of Indonesia to warm you up? Have a headache? How about a 2-year-long vacation to British Columbia to cool your head down? Hungry? How about 5-star food for every meal? Efficiency in your schedule is low. How about paying everyone out the wazoo to do everything for you so you can have more time to relax and make more money? Think you're ugly? There's plastic surgery. Don't have enough friends? The dollar is your friend. The list goes on and on. Story 57. I live in a town with a high concentration of very wealthy people. The amount of redecorating some of these people do is unreal. I know one couple that completely refurnished their large home twice in 4 years. Story 58. When you buy your PJ, you want to get a really low tail number, ideally 3 digits not 4. Air traffic will think you're an FAA official and bump you up in the approach pattern. Story 59. Starting a trust and investment account for their child. By the time the kid is 18, they are rich. Also, the child is a tax exemption and shelter while it's raised. Story 60. When booking once-a-week appointments for your child coach, therapist, tutor, etc., pay 7x to hold one time slot every day, rather than just once a week. That way if the child is traveling or just not in the mood, they can go on Saturday rather than on Monday. The other 6 go unused. But who cares? 7K per week is the same thing as 1K per week, edit spelling. Story 61. I know several families at my college that paid recent education graduates to teach their kids during the pandemic, basically full-time tutors, but just for 2 to 3 kids. Story 62. I went to high school in Seattle with the daughter of a very well-known billionaire of an even better well-known coffee chain. I always thought her and her brother were really down to earth, and our parents were members of the same athletic club. I remember it was always great being at their house because of the immediacy of which things arrived if we wanted them. Felt like an out. Let's fly to California and get some. Want to go hang out with our friends across the water? We can just take the yacht there. Or renting a presidential suite in a 5-star hotel like an apartment for several months in the summer. They were really nice people though. Story 63. A small thing, but park in metered parking spots without paying. The ticket they get is just the cost of parking there. They have their assistant or whomever to do the action of paying the ticket. Story 64. I heard a story about a footballer UK soccer player that called his assistant to help him with his car because it was broken. When the assistant got to him, all he had was a flat tire, but the footballer was adamant he wanted rid of the car because it was broken. Story 65. I looked into buying what amounts to old folks' home insurance. I wanted a policy I could pay so that if one or both of us needs to spend years being cared for not on our own medically, would be covered. Insurance companies do offer this, but in at least one case you need a $500K in liquid assets for them to even offer it to you. It was explained to me that this is what wealthy people do so that the money they pass on to their descendants is separate from the money used for the last years of their life. Or something. If I sound vague, it's because I don't have $500K in liquid assets, so it really didn't matter after that. Story 66. When my son was in grade school, I practically went broke sending him to a private school. I actually regret it. A family moved from Sydney, Australia and put their kids in our school. The husband is a billionaire, probably one of the richest people in Australia, as CFO of a worldwide finance company. Their kid befriended my son, and I ended up coaching him along with my son and other schoolmates in baseball, soccer and basketball. In most ways, the family seemed pretty normal. The parents, at least mom, were always at all of their games and birthday parties, etc. I've always been impressed with their lack of pretentiousness and ability to fit in with us commoners. The main difference, apart from the typical nicest SUV, etc., was the husband's topics of conversation when he would show up at a practice or a game. I'd ask him what he'd been doing recently because it was always fascinating, and it would always be something like, "Oh, I just returned this morning from London, where I met with the CEO of the World Bank," or "I was in Tokyo the past 2 days meeting with the Emperor's cabinet," stuff like that. He wasn't flexing. He obviously didn't need to do that. He was just chit-chatting. Then he would seamlessly segue into asking me if my band was playing this weekend. Story 67. I'm sure this thread will have lots of consumption spending habit examples, but a key difference: the rich think about how to make money work for them, not just use it. Story 68. I worked for a billionaire for a bit. He was the most chill dude, didn't act like he had money at all. I built him a bike park on 300 acres. It was so much fun. He was like 65 and just wanted to shred his bike. Worked for Lockheed and created the cloud for IBM. Story 69. Ordering off menu. I have a friend who does this. Clearly nice restaurants are up for this, but I would never have thought of doing this until I saw it. Story 70. Taking a trip to a location using a private jet that will cost them more than most people's car. Some trips singular costing almost 10K in fuel and pilot hours. A round trip could literally be 20K, the price of any mid-sized car, that they just spent on the weekend getting to their function, whatever that function was. Story 71. Buying single-use underwear. Buying every unit of a particular pair of glasses so you never have to search for them again. Getting the heels of one's loafers shaved by a 34th of an inch so that you didn't have to get used to the new height. Design all your holiday homes to have the exact same layout so you don't have to bump into things to find your way around in the night. Story 72. I'm a detailer and we go to the same customers, let's call him AB house, every single Sunday, and AB has a net worth in the ballpark of 9 figures. Yesterday when we arrived on his property there was a Ford Explorer sitting on the road leading to the hangar where we wash the vehicles. I jokingly said, "This man has hired the feds." After a couple of hours of working we contact AB, who is normally not home, just to let him know there's someone sitting on his property. He says, "Oh, that's the sheriff, no worries." We're obviously both like, what the? Later in the day the sheriff rotates out with a deputy, so as we're leaving we decide to ask the deputy what's going on. He didn't even know what the deal was. All he said was that they were hired to watch the property 247 for 7 days straight and that they are being paid $10,000. Yesterday I learned you can hire the sheriff's department. Story 73, I feel like most normal people don't give a hoot about tax loopholes. But for the rich that's their bread and butter. Making money is bad, because that can be taxed. Borrowing money to collect assets that appreciate in value is where it's at. Story 74, they don't watch the Kardashians. Most are wary of being a target for robbery like mugging or carjacking. They only dress up for social events, otherwise they would drawing attention. Story 75, spending $25 million on a villa that includes a sunken pool that require the entire footprint of the house plus pool area to be excavated 20 feet down in solid lava that they use 4 weeks per year. The unaffordable cost of housing shortage is not unrelated to this kind of wasted labor and resources. Story 76, have rooms exclusively for wrapping gifts, rooms for storing silver serviceware, have rooms with all the different light bulbs used throughout the estate. Story 77, talk about how they're not that rich. I used to date a woman that married a rich man who owns a bunch of boutiques in a tourist area. She says they go on 8-week vacations every winter when the shops are closed, staying in 5-star hotels every night. And she also says he's not rich, he still has to work. Story 78, my cousin was sweet mates in college with some prince, and he would buy all new furniture and clothes and electronics every year, and then just leave his door open and give it all away at the end of the year. I actually still have a really nice bookcase from this situation that I still use like 15 years later. Story 79, parents bought an apartment barely 15-minute walk away from the house they already had because it's closer to your university. The apartment was pretty much the same block opposite side as the uni building. It was a 3BR, 2BA apartment in which I stayed alone in, and was right in the center of Melbourne CBD. They then let me rent out the previous house 5BR that my 2 siblings had used when they were in uni, and it was closer to their uni buildings to my friend for a discount, and I pocketed the income on top of my normal allowance. When parents next visited, they didn't like apartment living, so they bought a lake house about 30-minute drive away with like 6BR for future grandkids, which they sold years later, and only their first grandkid ever made it there. Also in another city, Dad bought a 70-acre farm just to live out his retirement hobby dream of having a farm, and he planted a ton of fruit trees, built a helipad and extended the existing house. No animals though, haha. He laments how the birds have been enjoying my fruits every time he visits the farm. They don't actually stay there though, since it's an hour out of the city, so they have another proper house within the town.